Let's start working on tests for functions that are defined inside functions.ts file. So I'm going to create new file with tests with the name functions.test.ts inside test folder. And right here, as always, we have to import function it from the Vitest package to define tests. And first of all, before writing implementation for tests, I prefer to describe all testing scenarios. So we're going to start with testing the function formatSeconds with sign, which is why I'm going to describe this scenario as it formats seconds with sign, which corresponds to the function we're about to test. The next scenario will be for the function with the name formatSeconds. Gonna mention this scenario right here. Moving on. And the next function we're going to test is called normalizeSelectValue. I'm going to add this scenario right here. The next function is called getProgressColorClass. Let's also create this scenario for this function. And finally, the last function we're going to test in this file will be a function called ID. This function is used to generate random strings. So now that we have created all the scenarios we're going to test in the file functions.ts, we can start writing implementation for the first testing scenario. But the thing is that the function which we're going to test in the first scenario depends on another function. As we can see, it's calling the function formatSeconds. So it would make sense if we're going to start describing testing scenario for the second test. To test function formatSeconds. So let's see what this function is actually doing. It accepts one argument, which is amount of seconds, and at the end, it is going to give us formatted string. So for example, if we would call this function formatSeconds with the argument 60, we're going to receive such formatted string. If we're going to call the function formatSeconds with the value 10, we're going to receive the following string. And lastly, if for example we're gonna call this function with amount of seconds 3600, we're going to get such result, since 3600 seconds correspond to 1 hour. And now let's start writing all these expectations. I'm gonna get back to the testing file, and in here, let's call function formatSeconds. For this case, we're going to test what happens if this function would receive 0. In this case, we're gonna get formatted string where all digits will be zeros, like this one. So our first expectation would be as follows. We will use function expect, passing the result of the function formatSeconds, and at the end we expect that the return value will be equal to the following string. And now let's check the result in the terminal. Before I have to remove this code to to-do method, and we're getting this error related to generatePeriodSelectOptions function. The problem here is a little bit tricky, and what is going on is this. Here in this test file, we are importing function formatSeconds from the functions module, and inside the functions module, we have the import of several constants from another module called constants. But if we'll take a look at the constants.ts module, in here we're gonna see that the first import that we are using imports the function from the functions module. So we end up in the situation where two modules import things from each other. And that is why we're getting that error when running tests. So to fix that error, I'm gonna move a couple of functions from the functions.ts into constants module in order to make constants module not dependent on the functions module. So I'm gonna move generatePeriodSelectOptions, as well as another function that is used inside this function called generatePeriodSelectOptionLabels. And I'm gonna paste both of these functions at the end of the constants module. So now we don't need to export generatePeriodSelectOptions anymore. Let's remove this keyword. And all we have to do in here is to import type called selectOption. And now we can scroll to the top and remove the import of generatePeriodSelectOptions function, since we have moved it inside this module. And also before checking test results, let's just go inside functions TS and remove a couple of unused imports from here. And this way that error is fixed and our test is passing. So getting back to our test, and here I'm gonna call the function formatSeconds several times in order to see what results we're going to get depending on different parameters we're gonna pass into this function. And in this case, I prefer to combine these two parts of the test into one by calling the function formatSeconds in line inside expect function call like so. Let's check once again that the test is passing before proceeding any further. And now I'm gonna duplicate this line several times and change all these expected values. In the second case, we're going to expect 1 minute. In the third one, 3 minutes. In the fourth one, 30 minutes. In the fifth one, 1 hour. And finally, in the last case, we're going to expect string, which contains all zeros. So now we need to pass proper value into formatSeconds function in the second case in order to get such string, which corresponds to 1 minute. So to get this string, we have to pass 60 seconds. Let's comment out all other use cases for now and check if tests are passing. And they do. We can move on to other cases. In the third case, to get 3 minutes, we have to pass 180 seconds. In the fourth case, to get 30 minutes, we have to pass 1800 seconds. Like this. Let's make sure that all tests are still passing. And we are left with only 2 additional cases. In the fifth case, we have to supply 3600 seconds in order to get the string which corresponds to 1 hour. And finally, last case is kind of a special one. In here, I'm going to pass a number which corresponds to amount of seconds in 1 day. And to make it more readable, I'm going to multiply amount of seconds in 1 minute by amount of minutes in 1 hour by amount of hours in 1 day, and this way we're gonna get amount of seconds in a day. And due to specifics how formatSeconds function is implemented, if we're going to pass amount of seconds in 1 day to this function, at the end we're going to get formatted string with all zeros. And there we go, the test is green. So now I'm gonna switch back to implementation of formatSeconds function and change this implementation to make the test fail. This way we can be sure that we are testing the proper behavior. It is failing, just as we expect. Let's revert this change. And lastly, before finishing this lesson, let's switch to constants.ts and use keyword type when importing select option type. It's just a personal preference. I prefer to use type keywords anytime I import types. And with that, that's it for this lesson. Let's continue writing other tests in the next one. Link to the source code of this lesson will be in the video description.